Right.
Boo! I'm live.
Is it? Oh, I thought you just.
I think.
Wait, let's see if I can find it.
Okay, we'll have the obligatory little couple of minutes while Rue tries to figure out what the hell's going on, sees if I'm live, if I'm not.
I just heard you go boom.
Our level of technology is not great, as you might have understood.
Yeah.
Or we've got lots of technology, we're just not very good with using it. So Rue's the expert. Anyway, before I get started with tonight's reading, depending on where you are, it's this morning for me. It's 2 o'clock in the morning on Monday the 4th of May, which is my mum's birthday. May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, mother. Happy birthday. And
don't say her age.
Would I?
Would you?
I think it's roughly equal to a height in centimetres.
Oh, burn.
Anyway, so I shall have a little bit of a chat. You can see behind me. This is Rue's. Rue's beautiful. She said this is very professional.
Oh yeah.
So this is how far we go when it comes to professional. By the way, yeah, she has this beautiful fabric, which I think is destined for making trousers for us at some point.
Did you realise it? Look how wonky
it phase, but
it looks wonky as.
What looks wonky? The fabric, yeah. So let me tell you about professional. I just literally was sitting there playing Lego when then watching telly when Rue reminded me we had less than half an hour to go. So I shit bricks and decided I need to shower and shave. So she's been frantically putting this. I've got a lamp that we need here because the lighting in this room is appalling. So she's been building all this, my studio. It's beautiful. While I was frantically getting ready, and then I thought I still haven't even thought about what I'm going to read. So I've dug through and found a couple of chapters and shoved bookmarks in, and my bookmarks. We had pizza today, and from Domino's, and I've got little torn up pieces of pizza voucher on my actual bookmark. That is the level of preparedness which you are about to experience, ladies and gentlemen. So be very afraid. Anyway, so yeah, we've actually had a very good week, me and Rue. So I hadn't actually officially launched my last sci-fi book last time I did one of these video thingamies, so I have now. So Warden's Fate, and it's the last one in the series. So there's going to be more sci-fi. I'm going to keep writing it. Most of the people who sort of follow me on Facebook aren't really that bothered about the sci-fi aspect of what I do, so I don't go on about it too much if I can help it. But it's doing really well anyway. I had a really good launch. I mean, basically, there's a lot more people read sci-fi than read travel memoirs on the whole, as you can imagine. So it's I'm sort of rely on that to keep me and Rue able to eat, and able to buy like chocolate and things in her case.
Oh, speaking of, sorry. This is a public service announcement.
Oh, yeah.
If anyone else is excited, Marble Chocolate Cadbury have re-released Marble Chocolate. It's very exciting. It's disappeared years ago. It's back. Very excited. I'm telling everyone.
This has been an infomercial.
I wish I was sponsored by Cadbury.
She's still trying. If they just like reverse an articulated truck up to the house for that kind of chocolate.
They may as well have. Yeah. That's my weakness. Yeah. Marble chocolate.
So yeah. So anyway, so we launched book 5 in my sci-fi series, and it did extremely well. And sort of. I didn't hit any like bestseller charts or anything. My stuff isn't really that sort of major league yet, but it's done very well anyway. So suffice to say, we can afford to eat this month, so we're really happy. And so then, with that out, I've turned my attention to writing more in the travel sort of genre again. And me and Rue went for a long walk today, and we just had a big chat about what I was going to do, because I've been going back through all my memories and all my photos and everything, going back over the last few years. And the last actual travel thing I wrote about was when we travelled around Asia, and that was in 2013. We finished that trip, so it's been quite a while. So we've done a lot of trips. There's no one sort of standout like, oh my god, I have to write about that trip. Had a really great time going around visiting a lot of my readers in America, staying with a load of cool people and stuff. But it didn't have the craziness, the disaster level that I sort of normally expect, or I think readers come to expect from my books. And so I was looking at what we've done to date in terms of making another book of it, and I polled the readers on my mailing list a while back just to sort of see what kind of a book they would expect from me. I don't really think I can do an exact direct continuation, because I think it'd be doing a bit of a disservice, because those kind of books, they really all come out very bitty. Like the books that have done really well, like Kamikaze Kangaroos and The Shave My Spider about Asia, have got like a really good driving focus to like one book about one specific trip, and that I think that focus that they have really carries them through, and it shows in the reviews how people think of them, and the sales as well. And all the other books in between, they're a little bit more bitty and a bit sort of got lots of different things going on. They sort of fill the gaps between the other books, and they don't never as well received, you know. So it's been a long time since I've written a travel book. I didn't really want to crash back into the genre with a crap book that was just gonna, you know, be on its arse after like 10 minutes. So I'm sort of still toying with ideas, but thinking perhaps of doing a book coming more from like lessons I've learned on the road as I've travelled, like life lessons from decades of travel sort of thing, and trying to use that as a framework to crowbar in the stories, the best ones, because otherwise if I sort of literally have to write about, you know, then we went to this trip and then we came back from it and then we did nothing for a few weeks and then we went on this trip and we came back and then it was 6 months of boring work, and then it's going to feel really, really bitty to people. It's all over the shop, you know, there's not going to be a big driving focus. So I thought about like literally cherry picking the best stories and using those to illustrate like life lessons, if you like, and bringing that out. So anyway, but it's still all up in the air. We're just like toying with the idea. It's very much a work in progress, in that it needs to progress because I haven't done any work on it. Anyway, so with that waffle, I got a thumbs up from Rue. Apparently I exist somewhere on the interwebs. My beautiful mug
You're out there.
is out there. I'll start. I'm going to experiment very briefly. I'm going to read. Here we go. Yeah, I've got a couple of stories to read, and it's one of the things that really annoys me is holding this book. And this is actually Rue's copy. It's the first copy I ever made of that Bear in My Pants, and it's I wrote a little message to it and stuff. But it's pretty. I don't want to wreck it, so I'm sort of really carefully trying to like read whilst not wrecking the spine. I'm one of those people who hates to bend books back and put them flat. So I've been sort of quite careful, and it's really hard because I'm a person who talks with my hands a lot, and so I'm wanting to describe like bears escaping and all that sort of stuff, and I'm like, really difficult to do. Anyway, so in a stroke of surprising genius,
yes,
it actually occurred to Rue to mention that I have this book on my computer.
Yeah.
And so I can bring it up on my computer.
Right there below the camera screen.
So not quite sure why this didn't occur to me yet. Right.
You're not the technologically advanced age, are you?
You know, it's not my finest hour, clearly. Anyway, so I'm going to see how this works. Let me know, or let Rue know in the comments. She's over there checking them, and if people are like, geez, God, just stop doing that, then I will. It might be disconcerting because I'll be sort of not sitting here with the book in my hands. I'll just be staring right at you and reading the whole time. Or close. I'll be looking there, which is where my text is, and occasionally back at you. We'll figure that shit out. Anyway, as I said, I only just recently, as in 5 minutes before this, before I started, decided what to read. So I've got a story about a crocodile coming up. We'll see how long it takes me to get through it, because it's in a couple of chapters in the book, and they're sort of, some of them are quite long. But we'll start with this one because this has actually led to some other things which I might talk briefly about after it. But anyway, here we go. So this is a short chapter to test this new visual interface which we're going for. This is called Swing Low. What with Toby gone and the other volunteers being entirely female, I felt I was doing the honourable thing by moving into Toby's room. The luxurious double bed had nothing to do with it. But it didn't last long, as within days of Toby's departure, we had 2 more humans to accommodate. Mel and Mark were a proper couple travelling together, and their need for private room was greater than mine. Unfortunately, it was hard to bear a grudge, though, when they were both so damn friendly. Mark arrived wearing the most ridiculous hat I've ever seen a person wear. I mean, sure, there's super anorexic supermodels strutting down the catwalk wearing half a grand piano or a live narwhal on their heads, but in real world, actual hat-wearing stakes, this had to be one of the daftest. It was an enormous woven straw boater with a wide yellow brim. It shaded his merry eyes, his tanned skin and unshaven jawline. It also hid his hair, or rather his distinct lack of it. Mark was slightly older than the rest of us and slightly thinning on top. In order to disguise his hair's betrayal, he'd done to it voluntarily what Toby had tricked me into. It had it cut so short it looked more like a coffee stain on the top of his head than anything else. To disguise this, he'd bought the hat. Of all his mistakes, I held that to be the worst. His partner in crime, not that I could ever believe her capable of committing a crime, was Mel, a cheerful woman several years his junior, with short auburn hair and a perpetually sunny disposition. Together, the two brought some much-needed experience to the group. Firstly, Mark was an ex-vet. I don't mean he fought in Nam or anything, just that he used to be an animal doctor. And Mel was, well, she was a woman. We'd had plenty of girls at the moment, for which I was grateful, of course, but Mel possessed that cheerful efficiency around the home that kept us all clean and fed and made the place an altogether more pleasant place to be. I hate to say it, but this was another area in which a lack of Toby had been showing. I never really thought about it before, but the more I admired Mel's organisational skills, the more evident the comparison became. Toby had made a damn good woman. Best of all, Mel was a nurse. I'd been doing stupid things to try and earn recognition from the bosses for so long now it seemed commonplace. Sometimes it even worked. But I'd promised myself that taking over as coordinator would mean the end of all that. Now was the time for me to be responsible, to set a good example to the other volunteers and inspire them with strong leadership. It was exactly this point I was making on a pleasant Saturday afternoon. Caught in between projects, we had a fairly slack half day of it and were celebrating with a banana milkshake on the porch. I was straddling a milk crate in the way the bosses do, holding forth on my newfound sense of duty, when Mark brought me up short with a wave of his hand. I hate to mention it, old chap, but the boys seem to be out of their barracks. I was utterly confused. Mark gave me a knowing nod and Mel seemed to be studying the floor. Had I missed something? Then Glaudina gave a shriek and twisted round in the hammock to stare off into the distance. Marie, one of the Irish girls, was rather more direct. Jesus, Tony, your balls are hanging right out of your trousers. I yelped. The tough conditions at Santa Martha had been fighting a war of attrition against every item of clothing I owned. At least as far as my jeans were concerned, they'd won. A pudding-sized, threadbare patch on the inside of both thighs had recently disintegrated into a pair of holes, and from one of them, possibly the left, my testicles were dangling, free, swinging in the breeze. All I could do was stuff them back in, gingerly, and then make a break for the dorm room. Marie's voice followed me in. Cover yourself up, for God's sake, man. We're about to have lunch. And that was the first time that my balls made a bid for freedom. Don't know why, but it seems to be a reoccurring theme, to the point where when I first decided to become an author, I actually wrote into my bio that
things bid for freedom.
that one of the main reasons I do what I do is that my testicles often hang out of the holes in my trousers. It's for this reason I said that I spend a lot of my time far away from mainstream civilization, tackling all kinds of challenges. I get hurt quite a lot. It scanned, it was really nice, and it wasn't until I'd actually started writing science fiction many years later when I applied to be in some guy's promotion. And he got back to me and said, actually, I've just read your profile and I'm not very comfortable with sharing your book because people on my reading list are going to go up to your website and they're going to read about your testicles. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to decline. And I was gobsmacked, not ball smacked, luckily. And then
we started looking.
Yeah, Rue pointed out that it might not be to everyone's taste. It might be off-putting to some people. That their first ever introduction to me is me mentioning that I'm a guy who's constantly got his balls hanging out. So
not appropriate.
Yeah. So she convinced me to go around and change my author bio.
Yeah.
But it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in the back of every book. It's on all the Amazon websites in all different corners of the world. It's on my website. It's in interviews I've done. And every so often, yeah, we spent like basically the last 2 years tracking down my balls and wiping them out wherever we can find them. But And what can I say? There's some persistent and sticky balls.
Oh, man.
So
There's no need.
every so often we will. What did we find it the other day? It was something like it was in a randomest place. It was in like just the back of one of the books, or it was in the bit where I advertise my newsletter, or
Editorial
something
reviews
like
or
that.
something.
Oh yes, that was it. It was in the editorial reviews
Like,
on
why?
on one of my like on
Oh,
like
God.
the wedding book or something like that. We were trying to we'll remarket this to the romance crowd. Let's rewrite the blurb. So I went in and looked at it. She was like, "Oh my God, it still mentions your testicles." And I was like,
Go on, it's gonna
"Can I
go.
do?" They're like a character of their own at this point.
They really shouldn't be. At least you buy better trousers now.
Yes.
Do you?
Well, my balls still hang out of all the trousers I've got, so I
Time to
don't
go
know
shopping.
what it is. I've got pubic hair like wild wool.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway,
Moving right along.
at the risk of that being too much information, yeah, so that was kind of cool, but I did kind of keep losing. Whenever I looked up at the thing, I lost my place on the page. So I will read the next ones with my pizza voucher labelled bookmarks. And that way I'll act with this hand. I didn't act that much actually. I did a hearty boss-like thumbs up at one point, but I think I can live with it. So we'll go with the book for now, and I'll just try and crush the spine.
Oh no, it's fine. That's vintage.
Well, another drink. I have actually got booze this time. It's
An alcoholic grown-up beverage.
because
But it
bloody
is
hell, it's 2 o'clock in the morning here. God damn it! So I'm going to drink.
Pink drink.
It is pink. Anyway, so this chapter is called Stitched Up. There were times in Ecuador when I wondered what the hell I was doing. Like now, for example, as Johnny held the crocodile out for me to take. As crocodiles go, this caiman was a very small one. But still, and my mind kept circling back to this fact, it was a crocodile! Was I mad? Was Johnny mad for offering it to me? Or was he finally developing some respect for my hard-won animal handling skills? Had his faith in me reached such strength that it was now greater than my faith in myself? No, he was clearly mad. I mean, it was a crocodile, for God's sake! But there was still a job to do. With no choice left, beyond turning and fleeing and waving my hands above my head and shrieking as I went, I reached out to Johnny and slowly took hold of the beast. I could hardly believe what I was doing. I wrapped one hand around the mouth and nose, very aware of the teeth glistening wetly between my fingers. My other hand curled around the tail, tensed in case the little thing decided to thrash around and break out of my grip. The ridged scales of its back dug into my palm as I gripped the tail tightly. Got him? Johnny asked. See, I said, and he let go. The caiman didn't move a muscle. It just lay there in my grip, either not wanting to move or not able. Not because of the superhuman effort I was putting into restraining it, but because the fearsome-looking creature was dying. From this angle, it was hard not to lose my eyes in the depth of the wound slashed across the creature's neck. Sure you got him? Johnny was concerned after all, though most likely for the croc. See, no problema. I hoped he didn't hear the quaver in my voice. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. And he vanished indoors. I stood there, holding my breath and gritting my teeth, willing the injured animal to lie still. I felt a tremor in response, the faintest ghost of a struggle. In one piece, this guy would thrash so powerfully I could never have hoped to hold him. As it was, he was nearly cut in half. And I was still nervous. Surely someone was filming my plight for a hidden camera show, watching and betting on how long I would stand there, clinging to the miniature crocodile until I broke and ran for help. But then Johnny was back, calmly tying a strip of cloth around the croc's snout with as much drama as tying his shoelaces. Obviously, it was not his first time. The side door to Johnny's house banged open, and Leonardo, the vet, led Mark out into the yard, straw hat and all. The Ecuadorian vet was lecturing the English one on last-minute surgical tips, something which Mark was making a heroic effort to follow. Between them, the two carried a few simple items Mark would need for this procedure: a bottle of iodine, a kidney-shaped steel bowl for the implements, and, most worryingly of all, the implements themselves. I stared in morbid fascination as Mark proceeded to thread the most vicious-looking needle I'd ever seen. It was like something an arch-villain would threaten to torture James Bond with, gleaming silver, curved and barbed with a pointed razor blade on the business end. A cutting needle, he named it when he caught my gaze. I could only imagine the mess it would make of my fingers if his grip slipped whilst pushing on it. His fingers, rather. No anaesthetic for the caiman. It was too far gone already. Quite what reaction it would have when Mark started putting the needle into its flesh was anyone's guess. The outdoor sink where we filled the animal's water bowls was being pressed into service as an operating table. Onto the concrete draining board I lowered the caiman, gingerly, lest he decide not to appreciate it. Needless to say, I kept a firm grip on both ends. Mark looked a little nervous too. Hardly surprising, there can't have been much call for stitching up crocodiles during his career in the UK. Not a very common pet there. He took several deep breaths and aimed the needle a couple of times. Then he put the needle down and reached for the iodine. For a second, I thought he was going to take a quick swig from it to calm his nerves. No, he doused the wound and probed the edges with his fingertips. It never looked as nasty as it did at that moment, with Mark's fingers all the way inside the torn flesh, lifting and pressing back the different layers of raw meat. I could hardly believe this thing was still alive. The cut, doubtless from a machete, had sliced more than halfway through the neck at its deepest point, and the ragged edges of the wound stood testimony to how poorly sharpened the blade had been. A couple of other shallow cuts to either side of the main wound told a story Leonardo could easily read. The farmer had found the caiman in his fields, he explained, launching into a graphic reenactment of the scene. He pointed out an imaginary caiman on the ground in front of him. On the table, then stomped with crushing force on its tail. On the table, the real caiman had badly ripped and shredded scales on its tail just above where I was holding him. Then, with an imaginary machete in hand, Leonardo slashed down once, twice, increasingly frustrated. Not good machete, he suggested, pointing out the smaller cuts. Then, by me a two-handed grip, he made an exaggerated chop downwards, the result of which was the huge gash we were hoping to repair. The wound cleaned, Mark took up the needle again. He pushed the razor-tipped point into the caiman's scales. The caiman didn't even twitch. Its innards gleamed a dull, wet grey through the opening in its neck. I had the thought for about the 100th time, how the hell was this thing still alive? Mark was having trouble. His first couple of passes with the needle had been difficult, the scaly skin much tougher even than it looked, yet they'd been successful, and now a few strands of catgut bridged the gap in the creature's flesh. Only now the needle wouldn't go in. 2 passes through the croc's tough hide had blunted it, and with all the pressure he could safely put on the needle, Mark still couldn't drive it through again. Leonardo leant over to take a look, then made a suggestion which I caught the gist of. Threading a second of the evil-looking needles, Mark peeled the wound back a little more and inserted it into the softer flesh just beneath the scales. There was no blood. Either crocs don't bleed, or this one had already done all the bleeding it could manage. The cutting needle slid much more easily through what Mark described to me as subcutaneous tissue, and he breathed a small sigh of relief. He passed the needle back and forth faster now, stitching the severed flesh together just below the surface. Even going much better, it was a nerve-wracking procedure. I could see the sweat running down Mark's face, could feel it running down my own. I longed to wipe a drip off my nose, but knew it would be there a good while longer before I'd have a hand free to do it. A stitch pulled out as a thread followed the needle and had to be re-sewn slightly deeper. The leading edges started to draw together as the stitching progressed. Mark frequently paused to take up the slack on the thread, shrinking the wound a centimetre at a time. My arms and shoulders ached from the tension, but I was determined not to relax. Though the creature wasn't struggling, Sod's law would surely come into the play the moment my grip faltered. The sun beat down on the concrete yard, so hot on the back of my neck that for a fraction of a second I almost envied Mark his ridiculous straw boater. Then, for the last couple of stitches, the main task was done. Mark squeezed the edges of the wound together and tugged on the thread gently with his other hand. Slowly, the gash pulled closed. The scales overlapped each other, and almost nothing could be seen at the surface. Mark stepped back and eyed his handiwork and allowed himself to breathe again. He wiped his face on his shirt and resettled the hat on his head. I just stayed bent over, elbows resting on the makeshift table, both hands fastened firmly around the patient. It was going to live. I just knew it. No way we could have expended so much stress and effort for nothing. Good job, old bean, Mark told me generously. And just like that, I realised we'd done it. Well, more accurately, Mark had done it while I held it for him. Yet I'd been completely involved, and with the operation over and successful, I felt powerful beyond measure. What could I not do now? Well, apart from stand up straight, of course, or scratch my nose. Mark cleaned up the other wounds as best he could, and Leonardo stepped in to demonstrate giving an injection between the scales. Then they followed me as Johnny led us over to a newly created reptile house. In the greenhouse where Toby had planted his beloved vegetable garden, there had been a massacre.
Aww.
The infant vegetables had been attacked with azadons, violently disinterred and smashed to bits in the process. The earth had been raked thoroughly, turned over and packed flat again, and a pond efficiently constructed by digging in half a plastic barrel into the ground. I was amazed by the speed and brutality of the transformation. The ladies responsible, Mel, Ema, and Glaudina, were definitely not to be pissed off when carrying tools. Their ruthless efficiency had created a purpose-built crocodile sanctuary in a couple of hours. A low fence with a latchless gate split the entrance, and a small standing area off to one side from the caiman's domain. Even Jimmy was involved, off welding a latch together even as we spoke, presumably in case the injured croc tried to open the gate and flee. The only thing keeping the place from being perfect was the absence of a great big heat lamp. The girls had already disinfected the whole greenhouse and were busy disposing of the corpses of Toby's vegetables when I arrived with the patient. After a bit of a debate, we decided to free his nose. I held tight as Johnny untied the rag, then gently settled the croc into his new home and sprang back with all the reflexes I'd developed in over 2 months at the centre. The little guy barely moved. He'd already been through far too much, and his chance of survival rested on, well, rest. Mm-hmm. So long as he didn't move too much, the stitches should hold. And so long as we got antibiotics into his system, any infections should be kept at bay. Leonardo was super cautious on this point, having inadvertently overdosed our last caiman. Rather than one large injection, instead he prescribed several smaller shots to be administered twice a day. Beyond that, it was all down to the croc and the life-giving energies of the sun. No one needed to ask who would be catching the croc twice a day. It was both the advantage and the disadvantage of being the boss. All the things no one else wanted to do naturally fell to me. I didn't mind, though. I was willing the little guy to live with all my heart. I'd never felt so intimately involved in the saving of a life. Johnny favoured Glaudina and me with a stern look. Now you must feed him. He needs chicken. Is the truck with the dead chickens coming today, then? I asked. No, not for a few days. Anyway, he needs fresh meat. Oh, go to the chicken enclosure. Yeah? Catch one, kill it, and give him that. Ooh. What? I felt the blood drain from my face at the prospect. Johnny must have noticed. Can you do it? There was a trace of something in his voice. Humour? Sarcasm? He was enjoying this. Yeah, I can do it, I told him. Except I couldn't. I feel guilty for swatting flies. I catch spiders and put them outside. I even own a humane mousetrap. I looked over to Glaudina. Strong, dedicated, female. Surely she was tougher than me. We can do it, I amended. Johnny walked off, chuckling to himself. I turned to Glaudina. You kill bugs and things in your country, don't you? With big spears? I don't. Not personally, I mean. She searched for a suitable example. I don't even kill insects. Oh dear, this was going to be difficult. Well, I suggested we could catch the chicken first and then worry about it. We walked slowly towards the chicken run. It was right in front of the volunteer's house, yet we managed to make the walk there last a good 5 minutes. I was walking slowly in the hope that she'd come to some decision and announce a plan before we arrived. She was doing the same. It didn't help. Unsurprisingly, the chickens saw us coming. They'd have to be blind not to, us being several hundred times bigger than them. And they ran. Now you might think, being as how they were trapped, they would have nowhere to run, but this was not the case. These were some damn fast chickens. They ran left, I ran left, they ran right, I was still going left. By the time I'd skidded to a halt and turned around, they were already behind me, and probably having a right good laugh. Little buggers, I thought, when I catch you, I really am going to kill you. But luckily for them, I couldn't. I did pull off some spectacular sliding tackles, though. Go on, Glaudina shouted. She was proudly brandishing a clucking ball of feathers. Nice one! Damn, these sons of bitches are impossible to catch. Did you jump on it? No, it ran up to me and I just sort of picked it up. Pah! Well, in that case, it deserves to be eaten. I beat the worst of the mud and dust off my jeans and t-shirt and paused to snarl angrily at the rest of the chickens. They didn't seem overly bothered. We climbed out of the run and stood looking at each other again. Only now it was a three-way staring match. I glared at the chicken. It gazed vacantly back. Okay, I said to Glaudina. Kill it. You kill it, she told me. I caught it. I don't know how to kill a chicken. Strangle it. Ew. Well, you can't tickle it to death. I can't strangle it, she said. I'm holding it. Good point. I want to be quickly exploited. I made a quick grab and took over the heavy responsibility of holding the beast. Okay, I've got it. Now strangle it. Glaudina stared doubtfully at the chicken. I can't. It just looked right at me. Well, I'm holding it, I complained. Glaudina flexed her fingers momentarily. No, I can't do it. The chicken merely dangled and surveyed the area, serenely unaware that its life hung in the balance. The idea occurred to both of us at the same moment. Mark! Together we made our way back to the monkey cages where the other volunteers were now doling out oaty fruity goodness by the ladleful. Mark, having paused only long enough to inhale a cheese sandwich, was already back out helping with the feed. Glaudina jogged towards him as I shuffled along with my hands wrapped around her, now slightly perturbed chicken. "What's up?" Mark was cheerful as always, with good reason today, as he'd already saved one life, and I was about to ask him to end another. In my heart, I knew they had the hands of a killer of chickens. "We have to, for the caiman." Glaudina drew a finger across her throat for emphasis. "But we can't do it. Neither of us have ever killed a chicken." "I've slapped quite a few for looking at my girlfriend, though," I quipped. The joke fell on deaf ears, or possibly on ears that didn't find it funny. Mark looked at the chicken squirming in my hands and then at me. "It's years since I've done anything like this," he said, coming in for a closer look. "I don't know if I can still remember." He looked me full in the face. "Usually what I'd do," and with inhuman speed, his hand shot forward mid-sentence, twisting the chicken's neck completely around about 15 times like they're opening a bottle of Coke. It was over before I'd even registered what was happening. The chicken thrashed in my grip. In shock and horror, I looked at Mark, then at Glaudina, then back at Mark. Mark was grinning me. "No problem," he said. I thought you were gonna tell me when." My mind hadn't fully caught up yet. "It's easier like that. Didn't want to worry you." "Thanks, Mark," I managed. Glaudina recovered quickly and clapped me on the shoulder. "Let's go then." The chicken convulsed again. I let out a pitiful moan. "It's still moving." "Yeah, it'll do that for a bit," Mark said as he steered me by the elbow along the path to the caiman's greenhouse. "Careful, you'll get blood on you." I looked down and saw blood pissing out of the chicken's torn neck. "I ripped the neck a little bit," Mark confessed. My stomach turned over. The chicken gave a last pathetic shudder and was still. My hands were warm, my fingers were wet. "You're okay though, aren't you?" Mark asked, in sincere concern. Yeah, I'm fine." "Good man. Same again tomorrow, eh?" And he turned and wandered back to the feeding. I felt violated, and not in a good way. The caiman didn't seem at all impressed with his dinner. I lobbed it at him from a safe distance, but he didn't even flinch. The drama ebbed out of the situation. We clearly weren't about to witness a mindless feeding frenzy. All of a sudden, I felt tired and filthy. "Maybe you should wash your hands," Glaudina suggested. She sniffed the air. "And take a shower." Her eyes travelled down to the fresh bloodstains spreading across my jeans. "Maybe take a shower in all your clothes." "Maybe you should join me in the shower," I was inspired to say, yet somehow standing there dripping entrails didn't seem like the right time. I'm just going to have a quick look at the time there. That's the end of that chapter. How long we got? 32 minutes. The next one I was going to read if you ran out of time. Shall I read it? One more? Okay, we'll go one more.
We're awake. Come on.
Everyone's still awake. Okay. Feel free to sign off if this is starting to do your heads in, guys.
You mean entrails?
Entrails.
Hope no one's eating.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, not for you guys. This is great. I remember. I was literally holding it, this chicken, in my hand like that. "What do I do with it, Mark? Help me!" And I was like, "Well, the important thing about killing a chicken is you have to." I was just like, and then it was like, "So you're okay there? Oh, mind the blood. I tore its neck a little bit there, and blood was just pissing everywhere." I was like, "Oh, what the?" He's, "You okay?" And I was like, "Yes." He's, "Oh, well, same again tomorrow, eh?"
Oh no!
Shit.
Not a good sign.
Anyway, so this story follows directly on from there. I'll get through it real quick.
There's no
It's called Snap. The end of another week loomed large. We were all booting up for work when a couple of taxis pulled up crammed with school kids. They'd arrived as they usually did, a complete surprise to everyone but themselves, and Johnny, who clearly thought the imminent arrival of a school outing at his centre was need-to-know information. We lonely volunteers did not need to know, despite the fact that we were the ones who would have to control this rampaging horde of sugar-fueled mayhem. I was over the moon when Glaudina volunteered to lead the tour. I'd led a couple of them, and when there'd only been Toby and me to do it, and fielding rapid-fire questions from 100 directions whilst constantly hooking stray limbs and poking fingers away from cages full of hungry monkeys, they were not my fondest memories. As I trawled the cleaning rake around the top cages, I noted Glaudina's progress past the parrots and monkeys and was expecting her to lead the kids down the steps to the crap-encrusted main road and off to visit Osita. Instead, she turned aside and took the narrow path towards the greenhouse where the caiman now lived amongst the ruins of Toby's garden. Those kids shouldn't be in there, I thought, with a mental growl. It's not like they were in any danger. I was more worried for the caiman, actually. But something just told me that we should keep that area off limits. For one thing, the caiman was hardly in a good condition to receive visitors. I jogged over and caught the group up just as the last of them squeezed into the greenhouse. I shoved my way in and through the pack to the gate. I opened it, stepped through, which act alone brought everyone's attention to me. We need to get them out of here, I told Glardina in English. She nodded her agreement. I addressed the group. You can't stay here, I said, trying to sound authoritative. None of the kids seemed particularly impressed. See the caiman, I said. I looked around the group, making eye contact where I could. Él es muy peligroso. He's very dangerous. Which, of course, was a lie, but it had the desired effect. With a few gasps and nervous glances, the children retreated ever so slightly from the fence. I crouched down at this point to take a quick look at my charge. He seemed unchanged. I looked back at the kids and opened my mouth to impart more reptile-based wisdom. As I did this, I gestured behind me at the motionless croc. And in the blink of an eye, he surged up from the water, lashed his snout around, and sank his teeth into my arm. I screamed like a girl. More from the shock than the pain, of course. The children also screamed like girls, which most of them were, and fled the greenhouse en masse. The croc, having made his point, released me straight away and was once again motionless in his pond. I stood up, shaking, in shock and disbelief. It had happened so fast. The thing moved like lightning. I took a few seconds to breathe. Glardina ducked her head back in through the doorway. She'd kept her cool completely and gone after the kids to stop them running wild. Now she had a moment to check on me. You okay? She asked. I kept my arm behind my back, clutched in my other hand. I could feel blood trickling through my fingers. Yeah, I'm fine. Bit surprised, though. All I could think of was not to make a scene. Much as I wanted some sympathy, I didn't want her to see my face when I finally looked at the injury. He didn't really get me, I lied. Whoa, that was scary, she said, and shot me a worried look. Are you sure you're okay? I managed a nod and a feeble smile. Glardina shook her head and went back out to the waiting children. I heard my name featured a couple of times in her rapid Spanish explanation. Then she led the group away down the path, and down the steep steps to the road. Soon they'd be too busy dodging poo to worry about me. I allowed myself a few more calming breaths and stepped slowly, very, very slowly, away from the caiman's pond. He never moved a muscle. Once through the gate, but still in the greenhouse, and so fairly well hidden from the rest of the area, I risked a quick look at the injury. It had bled a lot, but the blood flow was slow and not quite as dramatic as I'd imagined. Standing there with it tucked out of sight behind my back, I'd gone through every variation of extreme croc damage my mind could summon up. I was expecting terrible gashes and blood sheeting my whole arm. Thankfully, small croc means small teeth, and in fairness, this was a very small croc. I could tell there were a few punctures and enough blood to soak my hand, and that was it. It didn't even hurt. That's when I realised I was in actual shock, as opposed to just mildly ticked off. I tucked my arm behind my back again and headed to the volunteer house for a closer look. I'd only been there for a few minutes, sitting at the kitchen table, prodding myself, when Mel arrived. Oh dear, what happened then? She instantly slipped into concerned mother mode as soon as she crossed the threshold. Glardina said you got... Oh, blooming heck! Mel, bless her, wasn't very big on swearing. I was hunched over, fixated on my arm, and probably still a bit wide. It's not too bad, I told her, hoping it was the truth. It doesn't even hurt. You're probably in shock, she pointed out. Full points to Mel. She held my arm gingerly, bending over to muttering under her breath. A couple of stitches in the big ones. Must have missed the major blood vessels. Maybe sutures. I'll be okay though, right? We'll see. Go and wash it. Oh, but I wanted to show everyone it still looks gruesome. Oh, yes, silly. Get it washed. My moment of glory was over so quickly. I went to the bathroom and tried to cram my forearm under the tap. There was no chance it would fit, so I cooked handfuls of water and spilled them down my arm. I wiped the blood, old and new, away from a series of small yet quite deep punctures that ran in a very satisfying pair of parallel lines all the way up to my elbow. I went back to show Mel, taking a handful of bog roll with me to mop up any fresh leakage. She frowned over the injury, twisting my arm back and forth, studying it with a practised eye. When she concluded her examination with a despairing sigh, I braced myself for the kind of lecture which, having nursed her mother, I had become well used to. Instead, Mel's serious facade broke all at once. You're going to have some lovely scars there. Yeah, I grinned back. When I get asked, what happened there? I'll be like, got bitten by a crocodile. My parents will go mental. It wasn't long before the story got around and everyone came to watch Mel patch me up. The best thing, of course, was the caiman had moved at all, so he was alive. Well, okay, the best thing was how cool my scars would look when they healed, but right after that came the fact that the caiman was alive. I was really, genuinely happy. For about 2 hours. "So," Mark asked after he'd finished examining my injury, "are you still going to catch him afterwards?" The ground dropped away from under me. It was now afternoon. The 4 o'clock feed was finished, and Mark had come to fetch me for my favourite part of the day, when I, and I alone, got to handle the caiman, to catch it and hold it while he injected it with antibiotics. I'd caught the thing twice a day, every day, since it had arrived, but caught was a bit of a misnomer. The first time since the operation, as I approached the pond, I'd been scared. The fact that the beast had been largely immobile the whole time we'd had care of him meant nothing. He'd been dying, and I was surrounded by vets and bosses. Here, I was on my own, at least as far as catching was concerned. I'd felt brave when I'd been awarded the job, and I knew no one else wanted to do it. Actually summoning up the balls to do it was different. It had taken a good few deep breaths. I'd put on and taken off the thick gloves a couple of times, all to buy myself time while I decided how best not to lose a limb. In the end, I just held my breath and grabbed. No problem. He did seem to strain a little bit in my grip, but that could have been my imagination. It was certainly nothing I couldn't handle. But things were a little different now. Mark led the way to the greenhouse. I walked slowly and chatted to him, whilst inside I felt like I was walking to my execution. My execution. We entered the greenhouse, and Mark held the gate open for me as I stepped through into the enclosure. He busied himself with his syringes and bottles while I looked at the instrument of my death. I was terrified. I walked carefully over to the pond and stood there looking down. I half expected him to go for my ankles in a blur of green scales and teeth. He didn't. Mark announced he was ready. He also seemed a little apprehensive, but not dramatically so. Mark knew his stuff and must have seen plenty of nasty situations in 20-odd years of vetting. He was also an exceptionally smart and brave individual. I was feeling neither of those qualities as I contemplated the task ahead of me. I managed to kneel down in my usual position, well, perhaps slightly further away than normal. My mind kept dredging up helpful snippets of information, like the fact that kneeling further away would make the whole process more difficult and therefore more likely to result in the loss of the hound. It was also reminding me of just how fast the croc had been. Faster than me. I'd bet money on it. In fact, I was betting my fingers on it. Since that first time, I hadn't worried about missing the catch. But what if, said my mind, what if you're so nervous now that you flinch at the last second and miss completely? Then you'll be in the shit. Ever noticed how utterly, perversely, inescapably negative your own mind can be at times like this? Maybe it's just me. I'd have given anything for an internal monologue that ran, "Hey, no problems, this guy's asleep anyway, and your hand wouldn't fit in his mouth even if you were so slow you gave him half the chance." But no, it said, "You are going to die. You may only lose some fingers, but once he gets his teeth into your wrist, they don't have helicopter ambulances here. You'll bleed to death before they get you to the bottom of the mountain." It was the pain I was most afraid of, though. Shock can be a wonderful thing, but I don't think it works if you're expecting it. This time, I was waiting for it, and when the bite came, "Come on," I said out loud to myself. I'd been crouched over the pond for a couple of minutes while all this ran through my head. This whole trip had been about conquering my fears from start to finish, and so far I was doing well. Every time something crazy needed doing, my colossal mouth was there to volunteer my services before I had a chance to think too much about it. The one positive side of having a cakehole like the Rift Valley is that life is never dull. And yet this was something else entirely. "Come on," I told myself again. Mark looked at me in honest sympathy. He was letting me take my time. "Just grab," became my mantra. "Just grab. Easy, no problems." I looked back at Mark. "Just give me a minute," I apologised. "Don't worry, take your time." "Right, I'll do it now. You ready?" He nodded. "Okay, I'll do it now." I did nothing. "Well, this time, now I'll do it." I took a deep breath. Then another. "Right, now." I started to reach, then stopped abruptly. "Holy shit," I said to Mark. "I'm so fucking scared." Mark smiled and said nothing. "Okay, I'll do it now. Just grab. Here we go." A few more breaths. The croc eyed me with evil intent. "Oh crap," I muttered and grabbed. 4 feet of lethal reptile, scaled, clawed, and largely composed of teeth, did absolutely nothing. With one hand around the nose full of fangs and one gripping the powerful tail, I lifted the caiman out of the pond and held it up triumphantly. Yes! I couldn't resist an exultant shout. I had conquered the beast. Or, more accurately, I had conquered my fear of it. Again, the creature itself became, once again, a rather small, seriously ill thing, and something to be pitied. Mark came forward and administered the jab, and I returned the caiman to the water. It gave a little wriggle as I released it, and I stepped calmly back. That water's too cold, was my first thought. Poor little critter. As we left the cage, I felt a weight lift off me. I looked back and realised just how scared I'd really been. Truly, honestly, the most scared I'd been in my whole time in the animal refuge. I'd had time to think about it, time to worry about the situation, like Machita worries about my socks. The 10 minutes between being reminded of the duty and arriving in the greenhouse to do it had been the longest of my life. But I'd managed it, eventually. This was definitely a story to tell lady, which suddenly reminded me of the next item on my agenda. Phone lady. Might as well do it while I was feeling invulnerable. And by tomorrow morning, Mark pointed out, you'll have forgotten all about it. It'll be easy again. Tomorrow morning? And the afternoon? And the next morning? It was a good job I was overcoming my fears. Came the chilling thought, I was going to get a lot more practice at it. And there we go.
Yeah.
Yes, poor little thing.
Did it survive?
That one did.
Oh, good.
That one did.
Did it release?
He says, oh, did it? No, do you know what? No, we lost both our caimans.
Oh.
So we just check in the... Yeah, no. Literally the next chapter after that I wrote about, it was quite sad. Had to bury it, but yeah, little thing. But yeah, he never. That's the thing. He was just too sick. He never really ate. We killed that chicken. I think we didn't kill another chicken. We gave him a fresh-ish carcass the next time. We never touched either of you, just too ill, really to move much. And so literally the only time he moved is one time he bit me.
You just have these things happen to you, and how?
He was I've got a pretty good photos of me actually helping do the surgery, and so he was about, I want to say, like a meter, maybe a little bit over, like this long basically. And so I had him by the snout, and his snout was like this big. So it would give you a nasty nip. I'm not going to lie. There was definitely finger loss and potential hand loss in there, but he wasn't going to swallow me whole. He was a little one, and but when he did thrash a little bit during the surgery, you could just sort of feel him flexing sort of backwards and forwards a little bit like that. But not a huge amount. And so the only time I actually saw him in motion was literally when I pointed him like that, and he just lashed out of the water, latched onto my arm, and then went immediately back to motionless.
Like it never happened.
Never happened. And it was
you
this
have
arm.
scars?
I got them very, very faint now, but yeah, I still have tiny little punctures.
That's pretty cool.
Just literally that sort of go like that all the way up, but they're just little tiny. And it was a long time ago now, and they ended up just being like little dots when they healed up. They almost look like acne wounds, just little, but in perfect line, which is great, and on the other side as well. Anyway, right, that's enough waffle from me. I'm sure we've been coming up on 48 minutes. Sorry, guys, time for bed. Anyway, so thank you very much for listening to me read my book. That's for now. I'm going to say that's the last one I'll do from That Bent My Pants.
A few other books.
So yeah, because we've got a few to get through. So next week, you all get a break because no one wants to hear me read from the second book anyway, so you can just ignore it. And
the sailing story is good.
Oh yeah. So even Rue says there's one good one. No, it is. There's a couple of stories I really like from my second book.
Yeah.
Don't Need the Whole Dog. So I will read some of that, and I might even read one of the ones that didn't actually make it into the book as well, because I'm just starting to edit those as well to send out to my mailing list. So I'll do that. So for the next, I've done five. It hasn't been five already. I've done 5 of That Bear, so I'll do 5. Pardon me, from The Whole Dog. Don't Need the Whole Dog, and then I will move on to Kamikaze Kangaroos, which is another favourite.
Yeah.
I'll do 5 from that, and then you're probably sensing a theme. I'm going to do 2.5 from the next one, and then 3 3/4 from the after. And fingers crossed, by the time I've done all that, I'll have a new book out, so we'll see.
Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Anyway, that's good night from me, and it's good night from her.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye. Adios.